Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Child Club channel. This is our first of our interview series, and we're going to be interviewing Mr. David Coombes. He is a private tutor, and so we're going to be finding out a little bit more about David. Now, I'm going to throw in this little quick caveat for you, just so you can how I know David and why I'm interviewing him. The truth is, David is my brother, and you might be thinking, oh my goodness, how is it that Tamsin is doing a whole business about only child coming? She's got a brother. Well, the fact is, I've got several brothers and sisters. I grew up in a large family, whereas I've only got the one child. And the reason I set up the Only Child Club was because I noticed the difference between the needs of a family with multiple children compared to the needs of a family with only one child. And one of the things I noticed is how when we were growing up, we were kind of supporting each other, especially in regards to education. David, you helped me with my algebra. You actually made it make sense to me. And in turn, I also helped my youngest sister, Lindsay, with her English. The fact that I kept reading Chaucer and Shakespeare and the Lady of Shalott, and she was being examined on that, I was able to share a lot of my knowledge with her, and that helped her out. But of course, if you've only got one child, they might not have the benefits of having eldest brothers and sisters to help them with their studies. And this is why we're going to be talking about the benefit of having a private tutor if you've got only one child. David, tell us a little bit about yourself as a private tutor and the sort of work that you do.
Well, I started as a private tutor when I was actually working in a primary school as a teaching assistant ahead of doing a teaching degree. And I was working in year 3. And it was actually a really good class because I was allowed, as a teaching assistant, there was a lot of openness available that instead of just going around chopping up pieces of card and tidying up cupboards, I was allowed to actually help with the children. So I'd go around the class, the teacher would set work, some people would get stressed, I'd sit around and talk with them. And so there's one girl in particular, Katerina, and we had a good rapport. I helped her in her maths. And then at the end of year 3, I was speaking with her mum, and the mum said, do you know anyone who could tutor our daughter? And I said, oh, I can do that. And they said, oh, that's great. That's just what we wanted. So that's where it started, really, was I already had a rapport. And then they recommended me to someone who recommended me to someone who recommended me. So basically come from recommendation. I didn't do the teaching degree in the end because I can't. The problem with the classroom is you can't help all 30 kids. You're doing something to help the middle, you're not helping the bottom, or you're not helping the top. And so by focusing on one child at a time, I can actually do what they need and help them the best that they can get. So,
Yeah, I've got to admit, I've noticed that recently I've been doing some cover supervisor work with an agency, go to school, and it's just classroom management. That's what it is. You know, you tell them to do the task, they're all getting on with it, and then you're moving from one student to another. And while you're doing that, other students are throwing paper airplane. It's a real challenge to try and help them. So I definitely see the value of being a private tutor as opposed to being a classroom teacher and trying to teach more at the same time.
You then get the maths coordinators or the government or whatever prescribing how you're supposed to teach, whereas everything I teach is developed myself from my own imaginations, my own observations. I use my own methods that just make it easier. Quite a few times, it's always satisfying when children tell me, "Oh, that thing you taught me, I showed my teacher, and they said that's amazing. We're going to do it that way in the future." Yeah. Oh,
Brilliant. I was going to ask you, you know, what is your teaching style? But what ways in which do you teach?
You adapt as much as you can to the student, obviously. Some are really reluctant to learn, so you're making it accessible. Some have kind of emotional issues going on. So in some cases, I'm half like a child counselor. I've got to listen to them blow off steam and deal with some sort of emotional baggage before they can actually get their brain on for doing math. Some are really enthusiastic, in which case you could go, okay, this child can go further. I'm going to pick these kind of questions and things. So yeah, if it praise my job. Generally, I'm not professional. I'm personal. So I don't have like a persona. I don't wear a suit. I just turn up as me. I chat with them as me. We get a rapport going. The rapport is the most important thing. I've had a few uh, children that have been on the spectrum. What on spectrum?
If you say
Hang
the
on.
spectrum, I think a lot of things cover under that umbrella. So that's a good
Yeah.
way of
Okay.
putting
Well, yeah. Autistic spectrum. Yes. So
it.
I've one student again as a sort of recommendation from a friend, and the mum got to me and said, "By the way, she is autistic. She might not like you. She might not like the smell of you." I sat down in that first lesson. She was just chatting fine. There's no indications of autism at all, and that I think is kind of my strongest point: is that there's always a natural rapport with the kids, so they can be themselves. You can't teach them until you know what's holding them back, whether it's they struggle with an understanding or they just emotionally, like the emotional barriers, quite often is what you're trying to deal with. Um,
I mean, confidence is a big part to it because if they've been going to school, they've been struggling in the classroom, they've fallen behind, then, you know, the confidence is at an all-time low. Even I imagine if you are given a personal tutor to sit with, your confidence is so low, there's a reluctance to even try. Have you noticed that? I certainly noticed that
yeah.
was not.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, that's it. That's true in life, isn't it? If you get beat down too much, it's natural to say, well, there's no point trying. So when you do encounter that, yep, I have had that. At which point, one of the things that really annoys me is when teachers say, "Oh, they just need confidence," and you go, "Well, you don't just get confidence; you build confidence. So you've got to set them work that they can get right." That's the main thing. You go, "Okay, here's a new thing. We're going to do enough questions that you get right, and you build confidence." So that's the trick, really. Is, you know, when they lack confidence, you build. But no, again, I'm very pleased. A lot of my kids go in feeling confident. Um, yeah, they. I mean, one of my girls, she's rubbish at math. It's not her natural thing at all. She's really struggled. I've been teaching her since year 5. She's now in year 9. So she was struggling with maths. Anyway, she was at the school, and inside the school, they've got their own rating level. So they got level 2, 3, 4, which isn't the GCSE levels. It's just their own internal one. And she sat her sort of level 2 exam and her level 3 exam, and her level 3 exam went okay. So she said, and then the teacher said, "Okay, you're going to do level 4 on your end of year." So she was like, "Excellent. We're going to work on that." She's good at algebra. And then she had a new teacher, and the new teacher said, "No, you're not going to do level 4. You're only going to do level 2 and 3 again." And this girl's wanting to get onto level 5. She's wanting to do well in her GCSEs. Even though she's rubbish at maths, she's wanting to do well in her GCSEs. She's wanting to win the work. So she actually was telling me on our lesson. Our lesson was the day before the exam. And we're like, "Well, you know, what are we going to study? We're working on level 4, but the teacher's doing level 3. So I helped her. She emailed the teacher saying, "I don't understand. I was told I'm going to do level 4. You're now saying I can only do level 3. On that Tuesday, the day of her maths test, she had a science lesson in the morning and then a maths test in the afternoon. And in the morning, in the science test, her maths teacher came up and said, "Okay, Eden, I've been asking around and people said it's okay. Yes, you can do your level 4 test." And then she sat it and she aced it and she like best in the class. Um, and that was her having the confidence. One, she knew she could do it, which would worked out hard. I mean, I've been telling her she's rubbish at math, but she's good at algebra. So she had the confidence, and she had the confidence to actually stand up for herself, which is really satisfying. So yeah, from a girl that goes, I hate maths," to, right, I want to get level 4, I want to sit my level 4 exam and then do well in it. That's what we're aiming for. Basically, that is what we're aiming for.
oh yeah, absolutely. So in regards to, you know, your student and that sort of ratio, have you got any students or have you had any students who haven't got any brothers and sisters?
I've had definitely one. Most have siblings because I tend to teach them and then they ask me to stay on and teach their siblings. So.
Can I ask you, yeah, how that sort of works if they've got siblings and you know, are you sitting in a room at the house you're teaching one student, one child, and then their siblings are banging on the door. I mean, how does that kind of feel it like? I don't know.
Always to say, actually, I basically sit in a room on my own with a student, and the rest of the family that's there disappear off elsewhere. Sometimes it's funny, they absolutely hate their parents being there. So if I'm the student and we'll be chatting, blah, 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 and then, let's say we're working in the dining room and then a parent comes into the kitchen. Where
Don't I?
we go away and then we get
Oh,
chatting and whatnot. So yeah, that space, it is kind of unique to the tutoring.
mhm.
You have a space where they're comfortable with the person, they're comfortable chatting, they're comfortable expressing themselves, um, which is, yeah, and so there's no emotional hang-ups to what they're trying to learn or do.
So going back, I was just thinking about your teaching style. So that I remember that you do it really well, and you've done it with SOPs very, like, you're very good at telling a story, especially with math. So you seem to be able to connect the abstract to something a lot more solid that they're able to envision. Do you want to talk a bit about that? And do you apply stories to everything that you teach? I mean, it seems to be very
I
story led.
When I can do stories, I do stories. So particularly in primary years, there's lots of story opportunities, like how did people invent numbers? How did they invent words? How did they invent coordinates? So there's always stories there. As you get older towards sort of secondary school and algebra and stuff, there's less opportunity. There's more in, like, the moment you look at science, there's loads of story there. I was teaching a boy maths. He was in year 11, teaching him maths. And then, one day the dad came in and said, by the way, he's struggling with Ohm's law. Do you think you could be able to teach that? Oh, okay. So what the heck's Ohm's law? So I grabbed a book, read it up as a physics thing. And as I'm reading it, I'm going, hang on, that's just a bunch of primary school kids getting juiced up on sugary drinks and running around like idiots. So that's how I explained it to him. But
Yeah,
that's just the thing. I tend to see the world in terms of stories. So I just
it's so
inject that.
good because people remember stories.
Totally.
Um,
There's a reason people invented stories. It's obviously part of the way our brains work. So it makes sense to use it.
okay. I might use some questions. I'm just trying to remember what those questions are. When would you say is a good time to start with the private tuition? Yeah, do parents identify students struggling with something, in primary school and then they get a tutor? Or, how does their thought process work? Do you know?
Um, so there's one girl. So I started teaching my very first girl, Katerina, in year 3, and then they recommended me to a couple of friends. So like my third student, the mum, she was in year 3, and the mum was saying, okay, she's struggling in math, she's not doing great, but she's still young. We'll give it a while. And then she went up to her room one day, and she had written, I hate maths, I hate maths, I hate maths, and stuck it all over the walls. At which point I thought, okay, we'd probably better get someone in. So with her, we did a lot of just gamifying math. She liked making videos, so we made educational videos, and then she ended up getting a level 7 over. But I was with her I was with her for sort of 8 years, from year 3 up to year 11. Um, it, Generally, it's when they perceive a problem. So sometimes it's come January, you get people, they sit their mocks, they don't do as well as they were hoping, and they go, oh, we'd better get help. You've got some of those at year 11. That leaving it a bit late, depending on how well the child's doing.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, you're talking about that. So, as you know, SOP's now in year 10, just finished her summer mock. So they've got
yeah,
like 2 sets of mocks. You got it in the end of year, and then at Christmas time in
yeah,
year 11, and then you sit your actual GCSEs in the summer of year 11 and the following
yeah,
year. So you've got basically a whole calendar year to potentially change your grades, go up
yeah.
maybe 2 grades. And this is what I say to a lot of year 10 students. I've said to SOPs, see what your gaps are in for your first month at the end of year 10, And then in theory, could go up to another grade come your next mock in year at Christmas time in year 11. And then theory could maybe go up another grade come the summer if you play your cards right. So when would you say that is a good time to start tuition for students who are doing GCSE?
I think that idea of you can go up one grade by Christmas and then another by the summer is optimistic. I mean, if you've got a good teacher, yes. But then if you've got a good teacher, you're probably not thinking of getting a tutor. So that is, to be fair, a fair bit of my work comes from kids where you don't choose your teachers and the teachers are rubbish. And so basically you go, well, this year's a bust on our maths education. We're going to have to get someone else in. Uh, it depends on kind of where you are. Like, go up a grade from like 2 to 3 or 3 to 4 isn't so tricky. If you're at 6 and you want to get to a 7 and an 8 or a 9, you've got to develop a whole load of thought processes. So it's not just about kind of knowledge. It's not just about doing sums. I would, if you're wanting, again, it depends whether you're just wanting a pass or you're wanting a high grade. If you're wanting a higher grade, and your kid's fine, if your kid's okay at maths and you're looking for a higher grade, then you probably want to start at year 10, I'd say. If you do it year 11, you can basically bump up a grade. I'd kind of say like a year a grade, give or take. Having said that, well, I've got a girl I started with. So I was teaching her sister last year. This was one where she did her mocks. She got whatever she got, level 4 or something. And they said, okay, come January, we want a better grade. They got me in. And then she went up 2 grades from January to May. Best result I've had would be, there are a couple actually where they completely failed their mocks. One girl, she was in lower set all the way through her higher school education. And then in the last year, they said, you know what, we're going to put you up in the top set. So for the first term, they're doing all this math. She's never done it in her life. She can't do it. She's completely lost. So they were recommended to me by one of her friends I was teaching. And we started teaching in January, and she got single-digit marks in her Christmas mocks. And at the end of the year, she got a level 6. So she went from like 3 to a 6 or a lot. And then there was also another boy. The school kept saying, oh, he's fine. He's doing fine at maths. He's fine. And come Christmas, he also got like single-digit mark. And then they started saying, oh, they contacted, the person go, by the way, he failed his math mock. Anyway, it's all fine. He's going to be fine. So they didn't know what to do. They were recommended by a friend. So I started just before Easter. So he had blown his mocks, and then just over Easter, he worked very hard. He did 2 hours a day over Easter. 2 hours a day every day for a week, 2 weeks. I don't know. He worked really, really hard. So he put in the hours, and then he got a level 6 as well. So you can if you've got a good student who's putting in the work, get progress. If you've got lazy students that don't want to do any work, then they'll do all right. But
it is down to that as well. And I've certainly spoke to a head teacher of a school recently saying, like, tell your teacher to stop scaring the bejeebers out of students, because there's the ones that were never going to bother to learn. They're never going to bother to revise or anything like that. So when the teachers, your GCSE grades, this is going to foundation of your life. Your life's going to be completely messed up if you mess up these GCSEs. They don't care. They don't really, they're not bothered by it. Whereas, of course, the ones that do care and are bothered, they listen to that, and then they even more, and the fear element has a real impact. I mean, would you say that? I remember your experience as a tutor and students.
So I can, absolutely. It's the same in sport, that if you fear failure, then you're more likely to fail, which then makes you fail, which then makes you fear failure. So I had that exactly. One of my brightest students, I started teaching her in year 2 for English. Struggles a lot with English. But then they asked me, It may have even been year one. Started very young. But then at the end of her year two, coming up to her year two SAT, the mum said, "Oh, and can you also have a look at her math?" And you go, okay. So I'm sat with her, and she's sort of fine at maths, and then she gets to the word problems, and there's this name, and it goes like, Harriet Mila is blah blah blah, and she can't read the name because of her English. And I say to her, hang on, this is not an English test. You don't need to read the name. Just say Bob. Just give it your own name. The moment she got past the language barrier, her maths was amazing. So we've been doing maths and English since then. So we're now in year 11. Her maths, she's very, very good. She's looking for a level 9. She should be a level 9. She sat her mocks, and she's done, for the past year, we've been doing past papers. She enjoys doing past papers. She does fancy high-level maths in that. So she comes up to her mocks, and she sits paper 1, and then I see her the following lesson, and she's going, "Oh, I think it was terrible. It was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life." And then she said, "I was worried that I was doing badly." And then she was struggling to kind of get connection. She's getting lost. So then I went home and thought, right, I'll just send her a little email saying, "Okay, you're only at the end of year 10. You're not expected to get a level 9 now. Because if you can get a level 9 now, you don't need to be in school. Okay. To get a level 9 or a level 8, you've got a whole other year to get that. So all you have to do is get the marks. Don't worry about it. Just sit down, get the marks." So then she sat her next exam. Anyway, she saw her today and she told me her results. She got 62% in her first exam, which is not bad. And then she got 75% in the second exam when she was no longer worrying. Well, that's a level 8. So now she knows that she can get a level 8. She can just focus on developing the skills to get the level 9. But that was totally it. If you are afraid of failure, then you are far more likely to fail. So yeah, that's a
I
life.
keep telling Socks that.
Yeah, it's a life.
Yeah, it is. Just a quick, well, I better throw this in, especially if there's anyone across the seas listening to this, and they're like, "What are they talking about? 9s, 5s, what's that? That's not for grades." Here in the UK, the GCSE system changed, the grading system changed. Instead of using A, B, C, all that, we changed it to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, up to 9. So grade 4 is like a lower C, grade 5 is like an upper C, 6 is B, 7 is like an A, 8 is an A plus, and 9 is an A plus plus, basically. So that's just to give you an idea of what the grading system is for GCSEs if you didn't already know. And this is a good little tip for it. UK parents who haven't got up with the new grading system. Right, I had some other questions. Let's have a look. What were they? Oh, I'm opening up the wrong thing. Yes. Cost. How much did it cost to pay a tutor? What would you say is the average cost?
I don't know the average. I know you've got some will be university students teaching me 20, 25 pounds an hour. Some will charge 70 pounds an hour and think they're worth it, and they're probably not. I mean, people have told me I charge less than others. So there must be a fair bit of 50, 60 pounds an hour, but it depends where in the country you are.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, when we were looking for a maths tutor for SOPs, and we saw some of that for the university student, but we did see one tutor going for like £50 an hour, and that but as you said, I think because down in the southeast, you're likely to be able to charge more. Would you say that when it comes to tutoring, you tutor more sort of the middle classes than do tutor the working class? Yeah,
because they just can't afford it on the low end. I feel a little bit bad about that because a couple of families, sort of lower income families, and you can see they kind of need the help of a private tutor, but I can't afford to be cheap enough for them to be able to afford me. So it's a case of, I can barely afford a living anyway. It's like, yeah, no, I've got to earn a minimum amount of money. It's not like I'm getting
Yeah.
richer. I've got to earn a minimum amount of money. And in order to do that, I can only get so many hours a week.
Mm.
So, the kids obviously can't get taught during the daytime. So there's only from like the end of school, 4 o'clock to say 7 o'clock to fit in students. So limited numbers. I have to charge a minimum amount, at which point I can't then help anyone that can't afford me. So yeah, it tends to be a middle income plus.
Do you teach any students who have been homeschooled, or have you ever taught
I
homeschool
have,
kids?
yes. So one girl was being bullied at school. The school, of course, did nothing. In the end, the parents felt they couldn't leave her there for her own mental health, so they took her out. So yeah, I was involved. I did an hour a week English and an hour a week math for 1 year. Then they finally found her a school, and her maths was way ahead of everybody else's because she was a bright kid, and yeah, that private tuition does. One of my students said to me, "I don't understand why this girl needs tuition," and I'm like, "She needs tuition because she's already good at maths." Tuition isn't just about helping bad people get good; it's about helping you get your best. So
Mm.
even the world's greatest actors and actresses with awards go out and do classes. You always can just get better. So
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, you think about Marilyn Monroe. She was a very, very, very good actress. She actually was very good, and yet she actually had a mentor with her all the time to help her improve. So yeah, absolutely, that's how people reach their potential. And I suppose that's the problem with schools and the big class sizes, is that it's very difficult to make sure every student is able to
yeah,
reach their full potential. I think
absolutely.
that, I mean, we talk about, let's talk about some of the benefits of tuition and private tuition. What would you say the top benefits are?
So obviously, one, you get better grade. Uh, that in and of itself opens opportunities. So one boy I taught, he was just aiming for a level 5. He got a level 6. Schools are weird. So he was in higher set. You're going to do the higher paper in year 9, and then year 10 and said, no, you're going to do foundation paper. And I'm like, no, foundation paper is a death sentence. Don't do the foundation. Um, and then worked hard to get him onto the higher paper again. And then he was just looking for a level 5, but he got a level 6. This year, he's now 18. I teach his younger sister, so once I still see him. And he said he applied for these jobs and they all wanted level 6 maths. So because he had the higher grade, he had these opportunities. So number one, a better grade gives you better opportunities. Number two, that whole experience, if you're bad at maths and you pass, you get the life skill of, here's something I don't like that I'm no good at. I worked at it and I got good,
Mm.
because that is a fundamental life skill. So it's not about the maths per se. Like, of all the maths they learn, they're going to forget it anyway. Fact that they learned that they can overcome obstacles. So it's about those sort of life skills, that resistance, resilience, that sort of shenanigans. In some cases, I'm a friendly ear. I've had some kids that have, um, oh, what's the phrase?
Okay.
Anxiety. So they're not comfortable around people. In fact, there was one there. So I was asked to teach the brother, and I taught the brother. And when I was there, the sister was 2 years younger, and the brother barely made eye contact, and the sister wouldn't even look in my direction. This was post-COVID and real sort of social anxiety. In the first lesson with the sister, she had this eczema and she was scratching and itching
Oh,
and super nervous. By the end of it, she would just chat away through the lessons, and she'd say, "No, this is my social life. I don't have any friends." Um, uh, there's that element as well. It just gives you another human contact. It gives another context, another person in their lives, which is, can be beneficial depending on what their school's like and where they fit in.
cool. And another question: online tuition versus in-person tuition.
In person. 100%. Over COVID, we did a lot of online, and in that, it was a case of they weren't learning anything. It was just a case of not having them fall back.
Yeah. You did
Face to
quite
face.
you did quite a lot of online with socks, didn't you, at that time? Because I couldn't teach a math. I'm absolutely diabolical at it. You well know. But you were able to do some online stuff.
A little bit, but online, but they're so distracted. Like the environment doesn't ground them in the lesson. I mean, so if you've got sort of busy-minded people anyway, I taught one boy ADHD, and he would we would do maths, and then he would break off and go, oh, here's a TikTok and another TikTok, and then he would start talking about video games and movies and everything. So very hard to keep him focused. In person, you can kind of just manage it a bit. You can kind of, it's like fishing, where if you ever go fishing, the gets on the line and you've got to let it go out a bit, tire itself out, and then you pull it in, and then you let it play a bit, and then you pull it in. It's like that with students, where if you say no, concentrate, work, they'll just switch off and get miserable and get nowhere. If you give them too much freedom, then they won't learn anything. So you've got to get that balance, which is different with each student. In his case, in the end, he was struggling to focus, but he wanted a Mandalorian helmet from a Disney series, The Mandalorian. So it was like an expensive thing. And so his parents agreed that if he did well in his lesson, they would get him this Mandalorian helmet. And then the way I structured that was he had a jar of beads and an empty jar. And every jar in the jar of beads was £1 towards his helmet. And whenever he started to wander, I'd just pick up a bead and drop it into the other one, and it'd focus. You don't even have to move a bead. The moment you go with it, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then okay. You can't do any of that online. It's impossible. So if you've got a mature student, I've got, various 15 and 16-year-olds, that's fine. There was one girl, so she was sort of struggling with maths, and then I happened to know her mum. So the mum said, oh, could you tutor her? And I said, sure. And so she had one of these with a bad teacher and demoralizing. And they had this weird thing where they said, your English exam is going to be capped on your maths. So if you're foundation maths, you're only going to be foundation English. Even though she was good at English, well, they're in schools, what you going to do? So,
I don't even know English Games Foundation.
No, actually it doesn't. So I'm not even sure what was good. I think that was with the classes. I think it was that they wouldn't the higher class for English.
Right.
It wasn't also higher class for maths. But she was 15, so she could obviously sort of concentrate at a mature level, and she worked really well. She enjoyed the lessons to the point that on her 16th birthday, she wanted a maths lesson.
Wow.
You can't imagine that was something. No, that's with her. So there, we could do stories and all sorts. That was a good, yes, good. And again, they recommended me to her friend, and then that was fine because she's 15, 16. That's okay. But with the younger ones, you want to be in person. There's so much more you get. Just reading them, their body language, everything. Yeah, in person is better.
Okay. I was going to ask you another question, and then I guess you better get on with whatever you're doing. Oh, yeah, that's it. Right. So, if anyone wants to know more about you, what you do, want to have you as a tutor, perhaps, where can they find out more about you, David?
Well, I do have a website, which is called GCSE Maths Rescue, but unless they live in the Woking area, it's not going to help them much.
Okay.
I'm generally booked up with recommendations, so I haven't really got any spaces next year.
Okay, right. You're just a very in person, aren't you? Very involved in things. And so subjects, what do you teach subjects wise? And kind of get the question, it's just a core? Just the core subjects. Just the core subjects like English, science, maths, is that it?
No, okay, so it's primarily maths. That is my main thing. Maths is satisfying because you have a question, you think about it, you apply logic, you get it right, you go, woohoo, I got it right. Whereas English, I have taught English. I think I'm quite good at it. There was a boy he needed to get a level 5 to get into his media studies. He was level 3. Uh, I worked with him. He wasn't concentrating very well because his brain was everywhere. He wouldn't do my homework. At the end of it, he still got a level 5. So I think my method, but I don't like teaching English because in English it's okay. Here's the thing, write about it. Okay, very good. Now make it better. Okay, that's nice. Now make it better. And you never win. You never get a
No, it's so perfect.
yeah. It's
Wow.
like every writer, they keep rewriting and keep rewriting, and at the end of it, just stop and get it out. Um, so I have taught English. Um, what one of the English ones I did have was complete out of the blue. So they were recommended by a friend who I was teaching, and they said, "Could you teach our daughter handwriting?" Oh, okay, sure. The thing is, so the trick to tuition is you don't learn it. It's just basically a mindset. Is you look at what's happening and you understand what they're doing, and then you try and find a way to explain it. So this girl's handwriting was terrible, and I had to look at why. What is it about how she's moving her hand and how she's forming the letters and things that's causing this? So I had to come up with various games and practice her stringing together letters in various combinations. And then there were some things where she had trouble forming a letter. So she couldn't write the letter K. It was going like all over the place. So I had to look at it and think, okay, start with an H. It's like an H, but then when you get to the bottom, it's got a belt and you pull the belt in. And that was enough to explain it. So, and then she got into pen earlier than everyone else. Just saying.
And like,
So yes, yeah, her handwriting turned out really, really nice, which is good. But so yeah, I have taught um, handwriting. I have taught bits of science here and there. Mostly it's like if I've got a student doing math and there's a science topic and they go, I don't get this. And I'll just go, oh, hang on, that's easy. It's just blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh, okay. But generally, yeah, there's enough interest in math that fills up most
yeah,
of my time.
I think math is a subject a lot of people really struggle with. I don't know why. It's very.
Just because it's barely taught. So easy. When
You see, I get annoyed at that when people say, "Oh, it's really easy. This for you."
no. That's the difference, right? I'm not saying it's. I'm saying the reason you struggle with it isn't because it's hard, is because you haven't got a mental model that accommodates it. If you were taught differently, you would find it easy.
Mm,
Like walking is easy because everyone can do it, but it's also incredibly hard. But it's not anything that anyone's going to struggle to learn. Math is, as a concept, is easy. The ideas, the notions, that it's easy. It's just been badly presented.
yeah,
So, like all the hard questions, there's no such thing as a hard question in math. There's complicated ones, but it's made out of little pieces. It's little building blocks. You go, well, can you do 2 + 3? Yes. Well, then you can do much of the math because it's just made out of building blocks that just fit together. So the
maybe
fact,
I'm wrong. I said I've always said maybe I'm wrong here, but with maths, especially when you're sitting a maths paper, it's just there's problems and there's methods to solve those problems. You just got to know which method to use.
there's
Would you say?
there's
No?
there's three aspects. So first of all, you've got to have knowledge. Like how do you add fractions, or so you know, oh, adding fractions, I've got to have the same denominator. Then you've got methods, so that when you're presented with an equation, you can go blip, 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 and solve the equation. And then the final aspect for the higher mark is understanding a problem and going, okay, how does my information fit this? So you're given a problem, you go, okay, okay, I've got a triangle there. So that's your knowledge. And you go, I'll use trigonometry to solve it. That's your method. And then you get a number and then you're right. So then that's going to be that. And so you build up aspects. If you just do the knowledge and the methods, you can comfortably get a level 5 in the higher paper. There's no reason at all on earth for every single person to go through high school and not get a level 5 ability in their math. People that get 2s and 3s and 4, that's just a complete failure of the schools. That really is. I should be fair there. In some cases, it's the students' fault because they just don't want to work, and no amount of trying to help them is going to get them to work. There are some schools like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I understand. like, a bit of a back up here so you can crack on with
Yeah.
whatever you were doing. Thanks ever so much for coming on this channel.
Okay.
And speak to you soon. Toodle.
How do I click?